Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Law Chat with John and Amy. I'm John Yulian.
And I'm Amy Poliafico. This week's question is, why should I reach a settlement agreement in my divorce as opposed to going to trial? First off, there's two ways a divorce ends. There's a trial in front of a judge who then issues a decision regarding every aspect of your divorce or sometimes part of your divorce. And the second is reaching a settlement agreement that you've negotiated with your spouse and then a judge approves. 99% of divorces reach a separation agreement as opposed to going to trial. And that's for a number of reasons. The first is you remain in control. It's you and your spouse who are making every decision regarding your finances, your kids, who gets your kids on Christmas morning. People like to have that control as opposed to giving it to a judge who doesn't know you and doesn't know your family. The second is doing a separation agreement is a lot cheaper in terms of legal fees than going to trial, which John will get into in a minute. And the third is it's generally better for your mental health. Going to trial is emotionally draining. Nothing is in your control. You have to do the whole emotional roller coaster that is testifying and then waiting for a decision.
To reach an agreement with your spouse, however, both sides are going to need to have realistic expectations of what would happen if they went before a judge and had a trial. It's essential in a divorce that you make sure you are making your best efforts to get a compromise, to reach a resolution without going to trial. I always say you can't control what your spouse does or your spouse's attorney does, but you certainly have control how you decide to handle the divorce and the negotiations along with your attorney. The downside of not being willing to compromise or not trying to compromise is your case goes to a trial, and it just doesn't make sense for that to happen. The vast majority of cases should be able to get resolved if both people are willing to be reasonable in the negotiations. If you go to a trial, the costs are going to be exorbitant, and I can assure you, much more than you anticipate. People don't realize how much work and time it is for an attorney to go to trial, to prepare for a trial. So even the preparation, the exhibits have to be all put together. The attorney has to prepare the questioning for all the witnesses and the cross-examination that is going to be done. Then on top of that, you have the days that you're spending in court during the trial, and then the attorney has to spend time after the trial preparing what they call all these post-trial pleadings that the court requires. And a trial just doesn't take one day. And, the outcome of the case goes far longer than you would see on TV, where everything's decided within an hour TV show. So you need to understand the costs of going to trial and making sure you make your best efforts at a settlement.
Yeah, and just to follow up on that point, typically once you say, okay, we're officially going to trial, your trial date's not going to be for months. And then once you do have your trial, it's not like a TV episode. You don't get your decision that day. Sometimes it takes 6 months. Sometimes it takes a year. I've seen it take up to 18 months to get the judgment from your judge. So all that time, you're just kind of in limbo waiting to find out what happens, which is pretty uncomfortable for most people.
I agree. I think that's a good point to stop for today, Amy.
Thanks for joining us. We look forward to chatting with you again next week. If you have a question or comment, feel free to email us at info@yulianlaw.com. Remember that Law Chats with John and Amy is intended as a general reference and considered general advertising, and listeners should check for changes to any applicable laws and consult with an attorney on any legal issue. The information provided does not constitute legal advice, and any thoughts or commentary by the podcasting lawyers is provided as a service to the community and does not constitute solicitation of legal advice. The lawyers in the law firm of Yulian & Associates PC make no warranties and disclaim all liabilities for damages resulting from its use. Nothing provided in the podcast should be considered a substitute for advice from counsel. No attorney-client relationship is formed by listening or participating in this podcast, and in the event that the podcast receives emails about the subject matter, no attorney-client relationship is created via the email communication.